The question I'm often asked is, how did you get into fire? Because it's really not my background. I am an environmental writer, but I ignored it for the longest time, as I think many people did. It really started some time ago when with one of the big fires I got up close, and that was the egg fire that burned almost 200,000 hectares in and around the Liard River along the Alaska Highway in northern British Columbia. And the one thing that struck me most about that fire was that how wildlife responded to the scorched earth all around us. I mean, it really was a really hot, hot fire. And the 1950 Wisp fire in BC was the biggest fire in Canada to start in this province before spreading to Alberta. The fire burned for a remarkable 220 days, if you can imagine that, and torched a stretch of forest that was 300 kilometers long. It was huge news back then because so much of the continent was blackened by the smoke. Rumors ran wild. The front page of the headline in the Toronto Star read, "A bomb? Doomsday? Skies scare millions." And in Northern Europe, where a blue moon suddenly appeared at night because of all that smoke, there was a run on the banks. And this always got me wondering, is that if you think the world is going to end, you go to the bank to withdraw your money? The 2003 fire season was not the biggest in Canada, not by the long shot in terms of area burn. What made it really stand out was the number of people, communities, and transportation corridors that were in harm's way. And then 2016 gave us the fire for the ages, or so we thought at the time. The Horse River fire was extraordinary because when it announced itself in May, 4 days into that fire, on a very blue sky day, they noticed that it was creating its own lightning, a pyro-CB, and that lightning was shooting out 30 kilometers in advance of the fire and igniting fires that far. And I asked myself at this time, is this the worst we've seen? You know, are we really in a new paradigm of fire? I was a graduate student in Canadian history and could not recall reading anything about forest fires. Artists tend to be ahead of their time, but while poring through archival records and art history literature, I found very few examples of fire. So, was there no significant fire in our history to be recorded and talked about? I got a chance to find out, going out with glaciologists who do ice coring to find out, the history. What they have found was that there was a distinct lull in burning from around 1600 to 1750, right around the time Europeans started settling in North America. And if you think about it, this lull in fire coincided with a little ice age from 1300 to around 1825, 1850, when temperatures dropped by 1, 2, 3 degrees Celsius. And there was another big difference back then. We had a lot of wetlands that came with the deglaciation, that came with the retreat of ice age. And these wetlands would have stopped or slowed the spread of fires if wind blew them along. But then a new reality began to unfold as the little ice age sputtered to an end around 1825, when the Great Migration began bringing in 800,000 immigrants, mostly of British and Irish origin, to Canada, and 10 times more than that to the United States. The big burn of 1910 made headlines everywhere. It was the political talk in both Canada and the United States, and ignited a culture of wildfire suppression. Politically, something had to be done to adapt to this new fire paradigm. And so, a series of incremental government measures on both sides of the border were taken to deal with this fire problem. And between 1933 and 1942, 6.5 million days were spent fighting forest fires. We have to remind ourselves at this point is that fire really is a much needed process. The Indigenous people understood this. And this wasn't discovered until recently, and I was involved in this study on grizzly bears as an observer in Jasper and adjoining areas. And what they couldn't figure out was all the bears in Jasper tended to be smaller and thinner than all the bears in the disturbed areas outside of the park. And then, they had the eureka moment. Yeah, the bears outside the park in a fire-disturbed area were feeding on berries and root vegetables that would not grow under a big shady canopies of 80 to 100-year-old spruce trees. Warming temperatures are producing more lightning. Again, that equation, very simple. 1 degree increase, 12% increase in lightning. We get drought and hot weather that are extended and undermining tree planting and stressing or killing mature forests. Disease and insects such as mountain pine beetle are ravaging older forests that would have otherwise been regenerated by fire. We're going to need more effective building and landscape regulations, more fuel and fire breaks. We've got to invest more in fire scientists. The universities, especially in the Canadian Forest Service is another example. There were 2,400 people working for the Forest Service in the 1970s, less than 700 today. Only 100 to 110 are research scientists, only about 12 or 14 are actually scientists who work on wildfire. We've got to promote more indigenous burning and forest thinning. We can offer better protection to the headwaters of our mountain rivers and sustain wetlands and protect wildlife corridors that will stop or slow or provide refuge for animals fleeing fires. Finally, we need a better understanding of demographics and how people are affected by fire. Climate change forecasts are not good. It's going to get hotter, it's going to get drier, and business as usual is not going to be successful. Lori Daniels and her colleagues from UBC and other fire scientists at universities in BC have been saying the same thing, my friend Mike Flanagan. So don't hope for Mother Nature to turn back the clock. So we've got some choices. Really, we've got the good fire, as I described, ones that occur naturally and then regenerate the forest and wildlife comes back in. We have the manageable fire, where we do prescribed burns, more indigenous burning, or we can do business as usual and have the ugly fire come at us again and again and again. Thank you very much.